happy New Year. I hope you all had a great holiday and vacation. If you went somewhere or spent it with your family, I'm Darlene, and this is Digital Photo Mentors Weekly Live. We are back for 2024. And as you can see, this is all about learning how to edit photos. So I want to welcome all of our newcomers. We have lots of new students, about 600 or so, Rob, 700 new students that are going through our Luminar Neo course. So if that is you, welcome. We do this every week, and I edit subscriber submitted images. So I didn't put a call out for new images for this one because I already had quite a few, and I made up a collection so we could do some working with color today. We may do a black and white one later on in the year, but I thought this would be a good thing to work on because it's something that I get a lot of questions about as we're doing some of the other lives. So I thought we'd do a little bit of a theme talk today. So I see a lot of regulars already. Sheila, it's nice to have you back. We did miss you as well. Vivian in Missouri, Debbie in Wisconsin, Karen in the Caymans, right? Are you in Cayman? Daniel, Todd in Virginia, Shelly, Prince George, welcome, Shelly. Glad to have you. And Deb up in Alaska. We were just talking about we're going to be doing an Alaskan cruise in May. So it would be great if we could meet you in person. If not, I don't know. We can talk about that. Brian from Nova Scotia. Sandra in California. Mark in Virginia. Oh, we got some UK, Patricia from the UK, and Simon as well. Nancy in Ontario. Manfred is back. Welcome back. Thanks so much, Sheila. You're very sweet. Lee. Yay, Holly's in the house. Holly's in the house. It is her birthday today. So everybody wish Holly a happy birthday. Edward in California. Karen, yes, in Cayman. Yeah, that's what I thought. Mamie, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Barry, Calgary. So you're just south of us. We're going into the deep freeze. Winter is finally hitting us. We've been managed to avoid it. So I see a lot of newcomers. Karen, Mike, Isla. Oh, Isla, nice to see you. Lots of happy birthday wishes for Holly. Steve in Salt Lake City. We'd love to just do a quick survey because we do have a lot of new students. If you are new here, put a number 1 in the chat just so we can kind of tally how many people are new. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to Luminar Neo. I'm already in Neo here. So let me just get out of full view here, full frame mode. And I'm probably going to do most of the editing with Neo today because of our new students. But if you are using Lightroom and you'd like to see a Lightroom edit, let me know along the way and we can hop over to Lightroom and do one of these. All right. So I've got lots of great images. So these are all subscriber submitted images, as I mentioned earlier. And the goal that I want to work on today is how to work with color. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're boosting the color. In some cases, you might want to lower it and make it faded out, right? So I'm going to start with one where I do want to boost the photo. Right. And let me just turn on my little sidebar here. So if you are new to going through the Luminar Neo course, you may have noticed that the early videos in the course are made with an earlier version of Luminar because I started making the videos when they released Luminar. But as you get into the later videos and the updates that I just added, including 2 for the generative tools, these ones down the side here. Let me turn on my little mouse pointer, right? The newer videos are made with the newer version of Luminar. So I'm going to start with this one here. And this is Nancy's image. So Nancy's here. And I think I have one of Holly's as well. This one, I think this is yours, right, Holly? This one of the chairs. Maybe we'll do Holly's first because it's her birthday. We should do birthday girl first, right? let's do the pink one because that's our sort of like birthday. So this is Holly's image, and we're going to do her flowers for her birthday. So, all right. So let's start with this one. And you can see that it is a raw file because we have access to develop raw. One of the questions that I get is, what is the difference? Can I still edit JPEGs? Yes, you can, but you won't get access to a few different things. So when we open the develop raw tool, you will see at the top a camera profile. Okay. Now, if you have used, and I'm not seeing it here, so hers may be a DNG or something. It's not recognizing the camera profile, but if you have shot raw, you should see your camera profiles here, okay? If you shot JPEG, you won't even get this section at all. The other thing that you won't get is the presets for white balance. So that's actually the first thing I'm going to do here is set the white balance. So when you pull down this menu and you have a raw file, you'll see all of the various presets. I'm going to try daylight just to see if it changes it. Okay, now see how it warmed it up? I have to make a decision on this image. Do I want it to be this warm, or do I want it to be more pink and blue? So I think this is probably more accurate to the actual color. So I'm going to stick with this, but warm it up maybe just a tiny little bit. Right? On the bottom slider, the tint slider, we can shift it even more pink if we want more pink. So I think I might do that. Okay, so we're shifting the colors a little bit. And if you haven't watched the videos in the course yet, I almost never touch saturation and vibrance except for possibly to lower it. Okay. Holly's saying there's no camera profile because it was a lens baby. That shouldn't affect it though, because that's the camera profile, not the lens profile. But that's good to know. I think your other one was lens baby, the one with the chair. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to stick with this for white balance. The other thing that is not available unless you have a raw file, so you could see this is a raw file, is this auto-fix chromatic aberration. Now, I don't think there is any on this image. Chromatic aberration will show up as a little, usually red or green fringe on the edges of things, especially on the edge of your image. And I don't see any here, but it's a quick fix with this checkbox if you do see it. Okay. And again, that's not available if you don't have raw. You won't even see that checkbox there. You'll see the other ones, but not chromatic aberration. Okay. I am going to add a little bit of sharpness here, not too much. Okay. And you can also do noise reduction on the develop raw. So this is all in develop raw. This is a super powerful tool. And one of the things that I want to stress here is using the histogram. Okay, if you don't see the histogram, you can turn it on and off under the view menu here. Okay, so see how it just disappeared? So show histogram. And the histogram is a representation of your image tones. So on the right is white and on the left is black. In the middle is medium gray and everything in between. Okay, so this is telling us that we've got a good range from bright colors to dark colors, okay? Bright tones to dark tones. If you want to see the clipping warnings, that means anything that has gone off the graph, either on the bright end, so the whites, or on the black end, just press J on your keyboard. Rob, if you could please post a link. For those of you who are new, you'll see Rob in the chat. He is my husband / webmaster. If you have had any issues accessing the course, you may have already emailed with him. So Rob, if you could please post a link to the keyboard shortcuts download. And if you are in the Luminar Neo course, you'll actually find the download on the introduction lesson. So you can get it from there as well. Okay, so I just use J on my keyboard to get these to show up. These are the clipping warnings. Okay, so where it shows a little red highlight, that means that this area is off the graph to the right on the white side. So that means it's white with no detail. Okay, so if I printed that, that area would be paper-based white. Okay, and the blue highlighted areas means that it's black with no detail. So what I strive for in my images is to keep all the highlights. So I'm going to adjust the highlights here just to bring this one down a little bit. I might go with the whites instead. But see how that's also adjusting the wall here, and it's picking up some texture, which is okay because I have some plans for this image. As you might imagine, I'm going to add a texture overlay to it. So this area is still clipping, and it's okay because it's a highlight. Okay, if you have a light source or a highlight, clipping is okay. With the blacks, I actually want the blacks to clip. So I might even add a little bit more. And I'm going to turn the clipping warnings off and do that again, because what I want you to pay particular attention to is what happens to the color, right? When I drag this down, notice how the color intensifies, okay? So if you want more saturation and intense color in your image, you just need more black, okay? So I might bring the blacks down and then balance it by increasing the exposure a little bit, right? One thing you need to keep in mind is that the exposure, while it does affect the entire range of tones in your image, it's mostly adjusting the midtones. Okay, so that middle section of the graph. So when you're pulling this one, it's adjusting the midtones more than anything else. Let's just check my clipping again. Bring the highlights down. So this is what I call the dance of photo editing. Once I brought the black slider down, I needed to bring exposure up and then highlights back down a little bit more. So it's this teeter-totter or seesaw dance amongst all the sliders, right? All right, so that looks pretty good. If you want to see a before and after, just use the backslash key on your keyboard, or you can hold the eyeball. I'm not usually a fan of using the before and after, right? But it works well. You have to adjust the slider so you can see how much more detail and color we're already getting. See that? And we haven't even gotten out of Develop Raw yet. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to close Develop Raw and then decide where I'm going to go next. I might want to do a little crop on this one. I have a couple of ideas. It looks like she photographed it with a pink board behind the flowers. And then there's this sort of gap here, right? So we can either try and crop it out, or we could try Gen Erase or Gen Swap to see if we could fill it in. Have you tried that on this image, Holly? I'm curious to see how it did. I'm going to go free form on the crop, and I'm just going to come up a little bit from the bottom, and I'm going to come in a little bit on the right because I'm not a fan of this shadow here. I want to keep the shadow of the flowers, but I want to get rid of this one that's kind of going diagonal. Maybe it's the window. So I'm going to go to about there and about there. I want to keep the vase so it has a base and some nice space around the flowers on this side. So something like that, okay? The other thing, I could do in the cropping tool is I could straighten it or tilt it a bit if I wanted to. I feel like maybe I want to go like this. Let's try that. And now I can just give it a little bit of space on that side. And I just tilted the flowers a little bit more that way, right? Okay. I think I'm liking that. Next, I'm going to add some structure to the flowers. Okay, so I want to give them a little bit more crunchiness and detail. So what I recommend often is to bring the sliders up quite high, just so that you can see what the tool is doing. Okay, and then bring it back down to somewhere what I call, realistic. And I only want to apply this to the flowers because I don't like what it's doing back here. And I want to get it just on the actual flowers. So there's a couple of different ways we could do that using the masking tools. We could try Mask AI and see if it will recognize flowers, right? It should do, because that's one of the things or one of the elements that the masking AI does. Yes, so flora. Okay, so let's try and see if it picks up flora. It's okay. It's picking up the leaves, but it's got a little bit of the background. So I'm actually going to start with that. And then I'm going to go to the brush, get it a little bit less soft. So the softer your brush, the further apart these two circles are. Okay. Can you see the two circles? So the further apart the circles are, that's the fade area of where you're brushing. Okay. So if you're brushing in something, you generally want a soft brush Okay? Unless you're trying to get on the edge of something like a flower, you don't want it to spill over. So I'm going to lower the softness a little bit. I'm going to make the size a little bit smaller, and I'm going to paint with about 65%. And I'm just going to go over these flowers here and maybe get a little bit more of the leaves. Okay. So I'm just going to get each of the flowers without going over onto the background. And I'm just doing a really rough paint, as you can see. Okay. And I'm going to get a smaller brush. I'm using the keyboard shortcut for that, which is the square bracket key. The left one makes it smaller and the right one makes it bigger. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I think I've missed that one. I think I've gotten most of it. Okay, so now let's go back to the adjustments and see what it's doing. So see how that's just crunching up the flowers a little bit? Now, before we leave here, I'm going to copy this mask, okay? So under the mask actions, I'm going to copy it because I want to blur the background a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is we have a couple of options. I could use structure again and just go minus, okay? And then paste that mask in. It's still on the flowers, right? And then just invert it, right? I realize I need to fix this spot right here, okay? So I'm going to fix that mask a little bit. And then I'm going to copy it again. So let's just see what that's doing. Okay, so that's blurring using minus structure, okay? Or I'm going to undo that one. We could use the blur tool, paste in the mask. I'm going to paste the mask in first. Oops, apparently that didn't paste. Aha. So must have not copied the mask properly. So I'm going to go all the way back to this one. Let's copy this mask again. Let's paste it in here. Okay, so you can see it's backwards, right? The flowers are blurred. So I just need to invert it. Okay, and I'm still getting a bit of the flowers, so I could refine it by erasing it off of the flowers. Make sure I get all of the edges of them. And I'm not doing the best job of masking this here. I just want to show you the options for blurring, okay? So I want to get the background more blurry than the flowers. Yeah, I'm doing a kind of a messy job here. Let's have a look at where the mask is going. Okay, if you're not sure where you're painting, just go down here and click Show Mask. Right? Then when you're doing your brush work, right, the mask is the part that's red. That's where this blur is going to apply. So if I don't want it on the vase or on the flowers, you just need to use the erase brush. Okay, so always make sure you're using the right brush. I mixed this up myself quite a bit, and I'll use the wrong one by accident. See, I'm missing that leaf there, so I want to get that one. But if you mess it up, it's non-destructive editing, okay? So everything you're doing in Luminar is not happening to your original image. It's happening in what's called a catalog, okay? So it's only saving your edits in the catalog, right? And you can only see the edits applied when you export or make a new image, okay? So here we have the blur on the background. But what if I want to do something a little different? Let's try maybe a twisted background instead. So we could twist it and do something like that, right? Or if you leave the angle set to 0, it makes like a zoom. So we're actually kind of zooming the background. See that? Let's do it a little bit less. I kind of like that, actually. So it's kind of neat. It's like zooming the background. So it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Let's add a little vignette. So I add a vignette on almost every single image. And my vignette trick is to darken it quite a lot and then bring the feather down to 0. Now, this is not showing the edge of the vignette here. You can see that it's going off the image because it's based on the original crop. And that's something that I'm hoping that Luminar will address eventually. Um, but right now you need to adjust the size and then reposition it. And you do that by doing choose subject. So I'm just going to move it up. So it's getting all the flowers, right? So see how dialing the feather down to 0 allows me to adjust the positioning of it, okay? Then I can bring the feather back up high and adjust the amount accordingly, something like that. Now that I've done all that, can you see that the image is now becoming a little bit too dark again, where the flowers are? I like what's happening with the background, but the flowers are a little bit too dark. So there's a few things we can do to lighten them. But let me just see if there's any questions coming in here. Holly says, haven't tried that. Not sure why I submitted this image, but she knows I'll make it look great. Let's see. Show mask is when you're in the masking tools. Let me just find that for you. Okay, so show mask. I did a mask on the blur, right? So you have to be on the masking tab of the tool. And then this masking actions section, you have to open at the bottom. That's where you'll find fill, clear, invert, copy, paste, and show. Right? That's where I also copied it. Okay. Good question. Okay, so now I want to brighten the flowers a little bit. So I could go in and do the develop, okay? Or I could try enhance AI, which will probably brighten them. Or we could try one of my favorites, which is color harmony. Okay, so let me come into color harmony and open the color contrast slider. This is one that I use quite a lot. And if you want to brighten one color and darken the opposite, this one is really great. And we have opposite colors in this image are complementary. Pink and green are on opposite ends of the scales here. So if I want to brighten the pink, right, all I need to do is put this here on the pink slider, the pink hue, right? If I go the opposite way, it's going to brighten the green. Let's go to the extreme. Okay, so see how it's brightening the green or the yellow and darkening the pink. When I go over here, I'm brightening the pink and adding contrast and darkening the green. Now, obviously, this contrast is too much, and the saturation, you really want to watch the saturation with this tool because I like what it does for contrast. But when you bring this brilliant slider down, it will bring that saturation back in line. Okay, so don't go too crazy. So this is a good one when you have these opposite kinds of colors, right? And of course, we can also mask it. Let's try pasting, right? Let's see if we can get it back onto the flowers. So again, I need to fix this mask because it's not perfect. And I'm not getting exact with it, but it's pretty good, okay? Get most of the flowers. I'm going to copy this one again so I have a better copy. And now you can see it's just affecting the flowers and not the background. Okay. Let's see. All right. So now, and that blur on the background is kind of done away with this edge here. There was this hard edge of where the pink thing is touching what looks like a table, right? I could go back in and fix this little edge here so it blurs right up to the vase. Right? As a matter of fact, let's do that. Okay, so you can go back to any of your edits just by going to the edit panel. And I'm going to go back in here and just use the paint brush. Okay, so paint adds to the mask. Okay, so I'm just adding. See, I didn't get that little reflection thing there. And the mask itself is kind of, I'm seeing it's doing some strange things in here, right? So it's not blurring the shadow, right? And it's picking up a hard edge on this leaf here. So be very careful when you're doing mask AI. I find that the edges are often, the edges are often too sharp. Okay? So I'm just softening those edges on the blur. There we go. I'm liking the direction that this is going. Okay. We could try enhance AI as well. See, it tends to go overboard. I'm not a fan of this one, to be honest. I rarely use this one. Right. If anything, if I want to brighten them, I would do develop and then just bring the exposure up. Exposure and maybe shadows. Because I want to brighten these flowers a little bit, but I don't want the highlights to go too far out. So let's just do that and paste in that new mask. Okay. Can you see right here? See how this edge here, that's from that blur when I did the mask AI. So I would go in here and fix this edge because it's not blending very well. So you have to kind of troubleshoot these things. When you find something like that, you have to go back a few steps and go, okay, where did that occur? And I'm pretty sure it's on this blur thing right here. Oh, maybe not. Aha, is it showing up there? It's there. Okay, so I could just go in here and put the new mask in, and that might help. So you have to kind of find where you've gone wrong and go back and fix the mask. But if you do that once, you can then paste it on all of the others. Okay, so I can see that my mask and my painting is not great on those areas. So I'm going to go and finish this one up by adding a texture overlay. And I'm just going to find one. If you're doing the course, we've given you a couple of sample ones, but if you want additional ones, there is one available. There's a nice ultimate editing pack available, and that's, you'll see that on, I think it's on the introductory page as well for students if you want to pick up the ultimate editing bundle, and it has more textures, more skies, more bokehs for you to play with. All right, my thing is stuck there for a moment. Rob says, shout out to hit the thumbs up. So while we're waiting for that to add, hit the thumbs up. And just as a reminder, in the email that I sent you, the cropping live stream that I sent you a link to in the email is a really a good one to watch as well, because there's over 2 hours of information there. There we go. Okay, so now the texture has been added. I'm just going to have it fill, and texture overlays work really great with changing the blend mode into, I find, either overlay or soft light. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a cold this week, so I'm trying not to cough too much. Let's go soft light. Okay, now this is another pet peeve of mine, is that I cannot paste the mask in from the other layer that I had already made up into this one. Okay, so if I don't want the texture over the flowers, which I actually don't mind it in this case, I kind of don't mind it. Sorry, that's me saving you from listening to my coughing. Okay. Yes, it is a Canadian Timmy's coffee. I'm just gonna get a cough drop. Okay. Let's continue. So I'm just flipping this texture. I'm looking at how it's applying on the image, and I want it sort of darkest up there. Let's do that. Just trying to decide which way I like it best. I think I like it like that. Okay. I'm happy with that. And now, if I want to try and fill this in, see how now it's just colors and shapes? We don't see sort of the defining bit of the wall anymore. But if we want to use the Gen tools, right, Gen Erase or Gen Swap, we have to come back to the catalog. Okay, so I'm in the catalog and I have the image selected, and I'm going to try Jenny Race. Okay, let's just see. Now, when you're using the generative tools, you do have to be on the internet, and you do. I realize I'm on Wi-Fi, Rob. I'm going to switch over to non-Wi-Fi. So cross your fingers, everybody. I just want to make sure that I'm using connected. Am I good? Still good? Might have been a pause or a glitch there. So as Sheila said, no, I'm going to go and work on that now. I'm going to try and remove it with Jenny Race. However, now that it's kind of textured, I could probably fix it fairly easily using just the regular clone tool. All right, or a regular race tool. But I'm going to try Generate. Okay, so now that I'm in Generate, I'm just going to select this area, okay, and click Erase. So it does send information up to the cloud. You do have to be connected to the internet to use these generative tools. It's grabbing information from there and trying to bring it back to fill that in. Okay, now this one is fairly simple, so I might have a better luck. I might have better luck with just regular erase. Aha! Look at that. It's actually really, really good. Look, it filled in, even had like a little highlight of light there. So I'm actually gonna do this section too. Let's do this section because there's still sort of a shadow or where the table was. So let's do that one. Okay, so it filled in the texture, and it was smart enough to know that I had some light and shadow, and it filled in some highlights there. So that's actually really cool because it looks like the light might be coming through the vase. Like, you know how when you get light through the vase or through a piece of glass, you might get some highlights. Okay, so this one, it's not bad, but it's not my favorite. So if I'm not liking this, I can just do reset selection and then try again on this part. Or I can go in to use the regular tools like cloning or erasing and just get rid of it fairly easily. So I find that Generate works really well on something that's large. And then what I could do is come back and use the regular tools just to finish it off or to blend it. Look at that. Okay, I'm happy with that, right? If we look at the before and after, I'm pretty happy. All right, so I'm going to save that. And I'm going to do, and now we have a new image, okay? So it saves it into the Generative Creations folder, okay? I'm going to move it into the folder where we had the other ones. That's the color folder for today, because then we can look at them side by side. And then I'm just going to take this new image, which is a TIFF now, and do a final bit on it. I'm going to add a LUT or a mood. And I have one in mind. I usually like to do like the sepia one or yeah, smoky. I love these ones because they just add sort of a hint of antique to them. Okay. I want to keep the color. See how it's just giving me an antique vibe? A little bit like that. Okay. And lastly, I'm going to add a little bit more darkness. I want to darken this corner a little bit. But if I do a vignette, it's going to darken everything. So I'll show you how to do a custom one, just like I darkened, brighten the flowers using a mask. I can do this by painting it in exactly where I want it. Okay, so I can do a custom vignette. I'm just going to get a really low strength here on my brush, big soft brush. And then I'm just going to start in this corner. I'm going to do it in one pass. So I've got my finger on the brush the whole time. Then I'm going to go one more time just on the edge. Okay. Let's get a smaller brush. I'm going to go on side up here one more time around the edge because I just want this side. Okay. Can you see what that's doing? basically just a custom vignette on that edge. Okay. And my last thing is I usually like to do a glow, non-mystical. I'm kind of moving away from mystical, and Orton effect has kind of become my favorite lately. You have to turn the brightness down to keep the same exposure. Let's see what it's doing. So it is still brightening. About like that. Maybe a little bit less contrast. There we go. Okay, so let's go back and have a look. So there's the original image after we did the edits the first time. And there's the new one with the corner filled in and a little bit of glow and a mood added. Okay, so I have something special, and let me just pause for a moment. Okay. Okay, Holly, I have something special for you. Let me just come back onto camera over here. It's fallen over, but wait, there we go. Let me see if I can get this to work. The cake is falling over, but we have a birthday cake for you. And I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try and play this on my computer. And let's see if this works or not. I hope that came through. No sound? I hope that came through. So happy birthday, Holly. I'll make a wish for you. I hope everybody likes chocolate cake. Sorry about the sound. I did have a happy birthday song that I thought would play on the screen, but there you go. There's a happy birthday sound. You don't want me to sing, trust me. So I tried that. I thought you'd be able to hear it through my thing, but anyways, chocolate cake. So there's the first edit. Any questions about this one, about what I've done here? Let me just check the chat. Yes, it is a layer cake. Yes, very, very, very punny. Very punny. If you come to our lives often, you'll come to learn that we have a lot of fun here. We've got a lot of regulars, and we got a lot of private jokes. So you don't want to miss out on the cow jokes, right, Holly? I should have edited a cow just for your birthday today. Those of you that know, we had a great discussion about a picture of a bovine animal as to whether or not it was a cow or a steer or a bull or a calf. So we had much identification questions about it. Okay. Let me see. Did I miss one question still, Rob? Or did I get it? Let's see. I got Sheila's question. So the general race is not a new layer. It's a new image, Holly. It creates a brand new image as a TIFF, right? So when I go back in here in the catalog, you see there's actually two images now. Okay. Gen erase. Here's the thing. Depending on the depending on the license that you have, Generace is standard. If you have a pro subscription model, you get all the tools. Okay. If you had an older lifetime license and you purchased the Creative Journey Pass, you should have these tools as well. If you do not see them here on the side, you may need to update your Luminar Neo. So do a check for updates, right? And if there is an update, install it. If you still don't see them, then what I would do is check your account, and you can get to your account from here. Okay. Rob is shouting at me. Oh, I answered show the mask, Rob. I answered that one. I don't know what you're asking me. Put it in the chat, please, Rob, because I can't hear you from down there. We need a microphone. Okay, so if you don't see Generace, go to your account and just check your license, okay? I'm on this layout on purpose. He wants me to go to this layout, okay? So if you don't see it there, go to your account, and that will take you to skylum.com. And if you have an older lifetime license, okay, so there's a lot of confusion around lifetime license, meaning that you have it forever, but it doesn't mean you get infinite updates, okay? And I believe that as of now, as of January, they're almost, I believe they're talking about, or the email that I saw anyways, doing away with the lifetime licenses, and that you'll be only on subscription moving forward. Okay. I don't see that as a bad thing. Okay. I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, because then you always have access to everything. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions? Let me go down here. Yes, my hair is very long, Sheila. Yes, it is. Okay, let's see. Okay. Oh, hey, Ed. Do all the AI tools require going back to the catalog as you did with Generace? Yes, that's where they're located. So you cannot access them from the edit panel. Yes, correct. Mike says, I realize what I'm saying is off topic. I let you know that I tried a 57 image pano and it stitched really well and in fairly short order. That's good to know. Awesome feedback, Mike. Thanks for sharing. Lightroom 6 choked on it. I would imagine it would, because Lightroom 6 is quite old. Okay. How would you change the newly created TIFF to export as a JPEG? So, Thomas, any image that you are finished editing, you just need to go to export in the upper right corner here and save to disk. Okay. Rob, if you want to please share a link to the video on exporting. There's one on YouTube if you are not part of the course. If you're in the course, Thomas, there's a lesson on exporting specifically and what settings to use. So if you're in the Luminar Neo course, I'm just going to look now at what lesson that's on so I can find that for you. Where are we? Number 17. So if you're in the course, Thomas, it's on lesson 17 inside the Luminar Neo course. And Rob, if you could please share a link to the one on YouTube for those people who are not in our course on exporting from Luminar. Okay. All right, let's get on to another image. This one I want to go a little bit a different direction. So I want to do one of these street images because I have some ideas about copying the settings to another one, right? So I'm going to do this one here. And let's see whose image this is. Oops, let me just see. Okay, Fernando. So I don't know if Fernando is here or not, but I'd love to know where this was taken. Obviously, somewhere in the Spanish-speaking world, okay? So I want to kind of take this to a direction of making it look more older world to go with the actual scene itself. right? We've got some wires here. So I'm going to use the erase tool to try and get rid of the wires first. Okay, so we've got remove power lines. So I'm just going to click that and cross my fingers and see how that works. So Thomas, are you currently enrolled in the Luminar Neo course? I'm just curious. Put a number 5 in the chat if you are currently going through the Luminar Neo course. I'd love to know how many of you are doing that while I'm waiting for this to work. Aha! It's done already. Look at that. Look at that. Is it perfect? No, but it's pretty darn good, right? It didn't remove the post from here, but I'm just going to use the erase tool since I'm already here and erase it that way. Super easy. And then if I want to clean up these other little bits over here, I can try that as well. And that went a little bit crooked. Let's see if I can do a better job. I find when you have a straight line like this, if you draw a straight line, it works a little better. I'm not getting what I want, so I'm just going to restore it. Let me try again. I'm going to go right along the edge here. See if that does better. Sometimes you have to go do it a couple of times. Because I want it to fill in that edge so that it's straight. That's better. And I'm just going to check over here. See, there's a little bit missing here still. But remember, you need to get the shadow as well. So I'm going to get the shadow with it. Of course, now it duplicated that thing, whatever that is. There we go. And it's left kind of an antenna here. So I can make a decision. Do I want to get rid of this as well? I think so. So if I want it to look old worldly, I don't want stuff that looks modern. There we go. Look what a nice job that did. Now, the only other thing here is there's a wire that goes here. I could decide if I want to erase this as well, but I think it looks okay. Okay, so just a quick erase to clean things up a little bit. Now let's start working on the style of the image. So I'm still going to start with develop. So even though it's not giving me develop raw. Okay, so I did erase first. Notice now, if I go to develop, it doesn't say develop raw anymore because I've done another tool first. Okay, so you always want to do develop raw first. But if you forget, it's always down here below all your other edits. So I can still get to develop raw. You'll notice that it turns off the erase tool temporarily. Okay, so my erasing is still there. It'll come back as soon as I finish and close this tool. Okay, now because this is a raw file, you can see here it does have camera profiles. Okay, so if I want to darken the sky, it's got some great options for doing that. Okay, it's really bringing out the blue. And I kind of don't mind that, actually, because if we end up going a bit more black and white and darken those blue tones, the sky will darken with it. Okay, so I'm going to go somewhere like that. Now I want to make sure that I'm not clipping anything. Let's bring the highlights down a little bit. And I haven't talked about curves at all, but the curves is a really powerful tool. There's an entire lesson on this in the course for you as well. And it represents the histogram here, right? So if you want to tuck in the whites, you just grab this side. If you want to tuck in the blacks, you just grab this side. Now, this is a great example of when I increase the black, okay? Look at how the color increases as well. Okay, so try and stay away from the saturation and vibrant sliders, okay? And use the black or the curve to add more color. I'm going to bring the exposure down a little bit. We know under color, I haven't talked about this one either, is we've got the pull down menu because it's a raw file and the presets, but we've also got this little eyedropper. Okay, so this works on JPEGs as well, right? Cake fell over again. Click on the eyedropper and then find something neutral. I don't know what's supposed to be white or what's supposed to be gray here, but I'm going to guess that this doorway and this entryway is white. So I'm going to click not on the brightest part, but on the shadow side of it, right? And anything that you click on with that eyedropper, it will neutralize any color cast. So if it had any color tint to it, it will go the opposite direction. Okay, so if I just do a quick undo that again, right? When I click here, I'm just going to go on this edge. See how it shifted it a bit yellow greenish? Okay, so that means that the tone that I touched had a bit of blue and magenta in it. So it's going the opposite direction. Okay. Indeed, it did. Okay, so watch these numbers here. Okay, so it's at 4608 and 10. And when I click on here, watch where the sliders go. Okay, so watch right here. See how it moved towards yellow and towards green. Okay, I think it went too far. I'm going to bring it back a little bit of magenta, but that looks pretty good. And giving less blue in there gives me more of that antique sort of feel, which is where I'm going to go. Okay, so now I am going to check on chromatic aberration here. Let's just see if we've got any. No, another nice clean image. I'm going to check it off just to be safe. Now, when I close this and go back to tools, it will also apply the erase tool. So all the stuff that I did with erase should catch up with us in a moment. I hope. There we go. Just took a minute to catch up. Oh, apparently I missed one over here. Apparently I missed a whole cord over here. Is that like that before? We've missed a whole wire over here. So I'm just going to go and get rid of this wire. I think it erased it before, and now it has not. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I'm just going to pick that up. Right. Now, the other thing to note here is you'll notice that the wire continues across here. So you want to make sure to get all of it, because just having it end in the middle of nowhere doesn't make any sense. Okay, so you want to make sure you get all of it. Like so. At least tuck it into the shadows here. There we go. And then I'm just going to fill that in so it looks straight. That looks good. Okay, now we're back to where we left off. Now I want to do what I have in mind is lowering the color and making it look a little bit more antique-y looking. Okay, so again, there's a few ways that you can do that with color. Okay, so we've talked about punching up the color by adding black or increasing the contrast. So how do we lower color? Okay, well, there's a few ways. We could do that with the color tool, okay, simply by bringing the saturation down a little bit overall, okay? Or we can do individual colors. So for example, if I don't want this yellow at all, I can just lower the saturation of the yellow all the way. Okay? Maybe we don't want orange. See how orange is actually affecting a few things? So the street painting is actually got more orange in it than yellow. So I'm going to lower the orange. And then I'm going to bring the blue and the cyan down a little bit as well. We can also affect the tones here. So we can go into luminance. And I think I want to darken this blue. So I know that this has got like some cyan, maybe some green. Oh, that's the tree. Let's keep the tree a little brighter. Okay. We can definitely darken the sky. So remember, that's affecting that blue that we changed the sky to. I'm going to go all the way with this one. Notice how there's purple in the sky. So that actually works effectively. Let's darken the sky with some purple. There we go. Okay, so we're starting to dial this color down. Okay, so I've done that with the hue and saturation sliders. I'll give this one a little bit more color. We could also affect the tint. Okay, so I know that this one has been affected by cyan. Notice how it's affecting this building. Okay, if I go more this direction, it's bluer. If I go more this direction, it's greener. So I want to separate these two colors a bit. So I like shifting it this way. Like so. If there's anything red, we can make it more orange. I'm going for sort of an old time look. Okay. Now, the antique look that I want to add, I'm going to do, again, a couple of different ways. So I want to add a color. Okay. But first, I'm going to do a vignette. So I'm going to darken the edges and then turn that feather down. Remember? So let's make it smaller. And maybe something like that. Rob is asking for a number 1 in the chat if you're finding value here. Okay, so now that I'm darkening that, and I've darkened some of the other things, it's going a little bit flat. So I'm going to go back to develop raw and just bring the exposure back. So where I brought it down before, I'm going to put it back. Right? So remember, it's going to turn off all the other edits temporarily when you go down below your the bottom here, and then it should just pop back. There we go. Okay, since everybody's leaving a nice number 1, tell me in the chat with a one comment with one thing that you have learned so far. What have you learned so far watching today? Yes, I did answer that question, Rob, earlier. You were probably finding a link for something. Now, I definitely want to add some structure here, okay? So I want to play up the crumbling nature of these buildings, okay? So I'm going to add some structure and go quite liberal with it. Now, look what a great job that does. Now, the one thing you want to avoid is doing that in the sky, okay? So I am going to mask off the sky. So I'm going to use Mask AI again, and it should find the sky successfully. My Timmy's coffee. Okay, so see there's a sky option, but remember when I select that, it's going to make the selection be the sky, and I want the opposite. Okay, so we have to invert the mask back down to these mask options or mask actions, right? So that's where that show mask is. Okay, so if I haven't answered that, there it is, and I'm just going to invert it. Okay, so now it's on everything. Now, if I don't want this tree, because I don't really want to highlight the tree, right? I can just erase it from the tree. So I'm not getting the tree as much. And maybe I don't want the ground highlighted as much as well. So now I'm lowering the strength and erasing or painting with an erase brush just along the ground, okay? And maybe even this building in the background, because I don't really want to highlight the background. Okay? Like so. Okay, it's kind of spilling over a little bit onto the sky, so I'm just cleaning it up a little bit. And before I leave here, I'm going to copy this mask. So I don't know if I'm going to use it again, but I want to have it just in case. So now I've copied the mask. Look at that. Look at that structure. Fantastic, right? Another one that adds great kind of grunge like this. There's a couple more that actually do a really great job, and details is one of them. Okay, I love the details panel because, and there's nothing like this inside Lightroom either. And yes, I will do a Lightroom edit for anyone who wants Lightroom next. Okay, you can't do this in Lightroom. It allows you to increase the sharpness of small, medium, and large details separately. Okay. So see the difference? There's large, right? This is why I like to take everything to extreme, right? Small details tends to make skies and things look really grainy. So you have to be kind of careful with that one. I sort of like, my formula is 12, 30, and 5. That's kind of my, let's go 7. So I got 11, 30, and 7. That's kind of my formula. And then I'm going to paste that mask in. Okay. Pasting that mask in again. So let's close that one. See, now we've got some nice grunge happening. The other tool that works really great for that is down here under creative, and that is the dramatic tool. Okay, so this one allows you to add sort of, if you've used Lightroom, it's kind of like clarity. Okay, kind of like clarity. I usually bring the local contrast down. Let's try something like that. Let's see. Lots of great tips here. Question from Emmanuel. Do you prefer Luminar over Lightroom? Neither. I actually use both, and I prefer each of them for different things. I use Lightroom for my cataloging because I can't do things like edit the metadata, add copyright information, add keywords, file renaming, and so on using Luminar. So I do those things with Lightroom. But as I just mentioned, things like there's no color harmony tool in Lightroom, which I really love. There's no layers in Lightroom. So anything we're doing with layers, I'd have to go to Photoshop. Sometimes I just find it easier to do in Luminar. The portrait editing tools are better in Luminar. You can't do sky replacement in Lightroom. You'd have to go to Photoshop and so on. So there's a few things that I prefer Luminar for. Another good question. Do you use a mouse or pen and tablet when you do your work? Right now I'm using a mouse just because I've got a microphone and space limitations. But often if I'm doing a lot of editing where I'm masking, yes, I will use a graphic tablet. Yeah. I think it's the one that I just did, Rob, on adding color, or was it one of the live ones? Okay, so let me continue with this one. Okay, so dramatic. Let's see. Do I want to mask this one? See how it's causing a little bit of halo on the sky? Let me just take this one up more extreme. See how it's causing a halo in the sky, and now I can actually see there's some water drops in the sky. These little marks in the sky up here, right? That means usually is a watermark on your lens. That's not a dust spot on your sensor. That's usually a watermark on your lens. And but can you see there's kind of a halo starting to form above the building? You get this white glow. Okay, so I would actually paste in the mask here so I'm not affecting the sky. See that? Because I want the sky to be smooth, and I'm obviously not going to take it to this degree, but keeping the sky not affected will keep it smoother. Okay, because I don't want texture in the sky necessarily unless I'm going to add another texture overlay. Okay, and it's gone too bright, so I'm just going to bring that back down. Okay, so we're getting close. See how we've kind of done that? The next thing I'm going to use is to start adding that sepia or old time look is toning. Okay, so there's a few ways that you can do this. There's actually 3. So I'm adding an antique color. Okay, I'm going to go into toning. And this is where you can add color into the shadows and the highlights. So I'm going to bring this up just so you can see what color I'm doing. And then I'm going to get something in the yellow range. Okay, so I want it in the shadows only. And it's still really orange, so I want to be more yellow. There we go. So bring the saturation up super high. You can bring the amount up as well, because then you can see the color better. Okay, so I really want something that's kind of orange. You can see it on the road really well. So orange to yellow, somewhere in there. Okay, that's why bringing these sliders up higher helps so much. Okay, so you can really see what it's doing. Okay, so see how it's affecting the blue sky as well. So if I don't want the blue sky affected, what do? Apply the mask. Okay. I'm going to go and do a color in the highlights. So this is now what's called a duotone. Okay, and I'm actually going to put blue in the highlights. So let's go somewhere like that. So this is what's called, like I said, a duotone. Okay, so you're doing one tint in the highlights and a different tint in the shadows. And it does tend to have the look of kind of an antique. So it's toning down the sky. See that? Toning down the color, giving us more of an antique look. Okay. Now the overall image has gotten brighter again. Okay, so I have a couple of choices. I can go back to develop again, all the way back down to develop raw, and take the exposure back down again. Remember, I lifted it up because I thought it was getting too dark. But after adding all these other things, it's now brightened it again. Okay. Or I could just apply develop a second time. Okay. Those are your choices. Waiting for it to pop back. So it has to apply all of those filters to bring me back to this one. There we go. Right. That looks better. The other way you can add, two more ways to add like a sepia tone look is to go into a mood. So apply a lot. Okay. Just give me a second here and get rid of my cough. Okay. So to apply a lot, I usually dial the amount up higher again. So when you go through here and you're hovering over things, it just shows it stronger. Okay. So I like the sepia one. These are in the creative. These ones come with Luminar. Okay. So you'll have these. And all these other ones are additional ones that I've gotten from somewhere. Okay. If you are a Luminar X member, that gives you access to assets every month, and sometimes they'll send you a lot or a set of lots. This is where these end up getting put. Okay. So I have all mine sort of categorized in folders, and when you hover over them, you'll see what they do. Okay. So I like the sepia one dialed down a bit, or to be honest, I like smoky and this Ushua and wooden one. I don't even know if it's Ushuaia, which we learned is actually a place in southern Argentina. We watched Long Way Up with Ewan McGregor, and he does this long motorcycle ride from the tip of Argentina up to Los Angeles, and they started in Ushuaia. Okay, so see what that's doing? Oh, it's adding more contrast, so I can decide lower that, but it's giving me more of that antique look that I want. Okay, if I want to keep the blue in the sky, what do? Paste in the mask. See, a little bit more blue in the sky, like so. I feel like it's brightening it again. I feel like it's still too bright. The third way that you can add a color we talked about earlier is adding a texture overlay. I am just going to do a custom dodge and burn here. Okay, so you can use the dodge and burn tool, but I actually rarely do. Before there was a dodge and burn tool, I actually used the develop tool and just painted it in where I wanted it. And I actually prefer that, right? So I'm going to apply it with a brush set to maybe about 25% and just paint it in where I want it. Okay. In this case, I want to darken this foreground a little bit and this thing here. So I don't want this cement thing in the, I don't know what this is, part of the corner here to be as bright as the building. Okay. And then if I lower this one, I'm going to get some more color. So every time I click the brush, I'm doing another 30%. Okay. So see what that's doing? And if I want to darken this side of this wall, but only a little bit, I've lowered it to 13, and I'm just painting that in. Okay. Like so. So I like to do these custom vignettes, right? It also allows you to actually paint in color correction if you need to. I think I'm going to crop this image a little bit. I want to make sure that it's straight, first of all. So I'm just going to click this, and it's going to try and straighten based on verticals and horizontals. And I don't think it's got it right. I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm looking at the verticals of the door. So I think it actually was straight, but I want to keep the original aspect ratio and crop in a little bit because I really actually don't want this part on the left side. I do like the tree because it balances, but I don't like that one leaf sticking out. So I'm going to crop that one out. I'm always looking at the edges of things. So do watch that cropping video that we did as a live a couple months ago, because there's a lot of value there where I talk about getting rid of things on the edges. Okay. If I want to correct the building distortion, you got to go back to develop raw again to do that. And down to the bottom, transform. Right now I can click on this button and see if it does it automatically. Do you see that? So it just kind of straightened out the verticals a little bit. Did a good job, actually. And now when I come back here, I might need to adjust the crop. So I got to wait for it to apply all the tools again. Okay, so that's why you really want to do all of your develop raw stuff first, so you don't have to keep going back and forth. Right? Let's see. There we go. Okay, so now I might just revisit my crop and see if I want to back it off just a tiny little bit. Yes. Okay. So now it's taken care of that issue with the tree. So I want to keep the tree there and keep the bottom, okay? Like that. Perfect. Now, another option is actually cropping into the edge of this building. I might actually come in right to the edge. Let's see how that works. Maybe even to the bottom of this thing here. I just feel like there's too much stuff on the bottom. What if we go into more of a panorama like this? So I'm going off the original aspect ratio, right? Which is fine. You can do that. Oh, I like that better. I just felt like that bottom part was taking up too much volume, and I want to focus on the front of this building, and the part on the left was taking my eye away from it, as was the stuff at the bottom, right? So let's see how we're doing. We've now minimized the color, controlled the tint of it, added some antique tinting, and if I want to further with that, I can add a texture. And when you add a texture overlay, and I talk about this in the course, let me see, on the lesson where I add a texture. Let me just pick one that I think is going to work on here. I want something a little brownish, maybe that looks like a painting. I've already got some added, so I don't need to go looking for it. Let's do I have a brown one? I have an orange one. Let's do this one. It's kind of a grunge one. It's like a brick. Oh, it popped in. It popped in quickly. And if you are looking for layers in the course, I talk about layers starting on lesson 14, 14, 15, all the way down to 16.2. Okay, so we talk about doing different things with layers and adding things like this, like a texture. Right. So when I come in, you'll notice that it doesn't fit because I changed the aspect ratio of the original image. So I can have it fill, which means it will enlarge the overlay. Now it's going off the edges here, or stretch it. Okay. And when I'm doing a texture, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to do stretch and then change the blend mode. And usually overlay or soft light is one that I want to use. I think in this case, overlay, and then just decide where I want it positioned. Okay, now you'll notice that it does have a lot of orange in it. Okay, so if I don't want that color and I just want the texture, we can fix that. Okay, so I'm going to go with overlay. Right. It's also adding a lot of contrast. So that's something we may want to go back to the bottom layer to fix. But if I don't want that orange, just make sure that I'm on this layer and just convert it to black and white. Right? See how that's changing that? Right? Actually, I kind of liked it a bit more orange. So maybe I'll just dial the color down a little bit. I will just bring the saturation of this. So remember, we're on the top layer, just the texture. So I'm just going to bring the saturation down a little bit, like so. And then I'm going to lower the opacity. So the texture is a little bit more subtle, like so. I still find that this image keeps getting too bright. So I'm going to dial it down again. How's that? Okay, so there is our before. Looks very modern in terms of the building itself is old, but the style of photo, lots of color, right? Now, what have we got? Something that looks old, right? And if you have, one thing that has like dust and scratches, there's some other things built in to Luminar. You've got these light flares and light leaks and so on. You can add one of these, right? So you can make it look like it's an old photo that's, been exposed to light. Let's try, I don't know what these are going to look like, but these have some scratches and things. Okay. Let's try this one. I'm looking for one that makes it look old. No. And sometimes you just have to play around with them a little bit. Let's try this one. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Where's the light coming from? Light coming from up there. So let's say we had a light leak there. Okay, so see how that's kind of starting to look like an old photo? Okay, I'm still not sold on this particular one, but you get the idea, right? You could add one of these. Stardust bokeh. No. Flares, light flare. You really have to kind of start to know what these things do. Okay, see the speckles? Also helping to make it look like it's old, so that's not bad. Another thing that can help if you want an antique type of look is actually the matte tool. Okay, so when you bring the matte tool up, it starts to look, you can get this faded out black and white look. Okay, you can do the same thing, however, with curves. So I often do it with curves. So if you want it to look a little bit more faded out, okay, we can dial the color down. We can dial the contrast down. Now we're getting somewhere. See that? Does that look like an old photo? All right, let's see. Do we have any questions? Super helpful videos. Thanks for sharing your Neo techniques. You're most welcome, Richard. Welcome. Thanks for joining. And I want to do a Lightroom edit for those that are still here. Who's still here that would like me to do a Lightroom edit? So we've kind of only done 2 edits today, but we went 2 different directions, right? One, I punched up the color and worked with it, and this one, I've lowered the color. Just to mention, the texture that I'm using is part of our ultimate editing bundle. So if you want to pick that up, if you are a student, you have access to that on the introduction, or is it on lesson 1? I think it's on the introduction page. So yes, if you are in the class at the bottom of introductory lesson, you'll see the ultimate editing bundle. Rob says, put 1 in the chat if you want to keep going, if you want a Lightroom edit, or 8 to keep going with Luminar Neo. Karen said she would like Lightroom. Deb would like Lightroom. I think just to share the love, we should do that, right? I feel like now a light leak would work well on here. Okay, you guys keep voting. Let me just see what I can add on here. I'm still playing. See, part of the editing process literally is just playing around, you know? Like, that's too much color, so that doesn't work. I want one that's just faded. Now we've got sort of like a sparkly bokeh. Yeah, I'm not finding the right ones. Okay. I'm referring to our Luminar Neo course. Rob, could you please share a link to the Luminar Neo course for voice fields of gold? Do you have a first name voice? Let's see. How many people are voting here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 votes for Lightroom. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 votes, 9 votes for Neo, 10 votes for Neo. Why don't I do 1 for Lightroom, and then let's see if I have time for 1 more in Neo. Okay. So what I wanted to do with this one was do the same kind of thing. But let's do a curves edit here, because this one is kind of abstract. It was sent in and it's a raw file, right? But when you're working with abstract, I'm going to do this with curves. So this will apply in Neo as well. So I'm going to be doing it in Lightroom, but exactly the same thing applies in Neo. Okay, so all I'm going to do is find a camera profile first that gives me more color. So landscape does that nicely. And then I'm just going to increase my highlights a bit. And this is a trick in Lightroom that you don't have in Luminar. And it's called the shift double click trick. So if you hold your mouse over the word whites, hold the shift key down and double click the word, it will move the graph, move the white slider to meet the edge of the graph. Okay, so it's just touching the edge without anything clipping. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit more black so we have nice edges. And I think I might do a vignette on this one. And I've got a preset, so I can do that really quickly and easily. So now we've got some nice color. In this case, I might just give it a little bit of vibrance. Or we could go into the color mixer, which is the same as what I did in Luminar. Okay, so the color mixer is the HSL or the color tool. Okay, same thing, where I can brighten or darken things, right? So I can give orange a bit more saturation and the blue. I can also shift the blue color if I want. Now, because we're going abstract, I think I like this kind of a little bit more cyan. And we could shift this one more yellow. So let's go just ever so slightly. Okay, so we're shifting. There's the original. Look at how much more color we've got already. Okay, so keep in mind, all of these things apply in Neo as well. I did the color profile. We added some blacks and whites, so punching the contrast, and using the color tool, in this case called Color Mixer in Lightroom, color tool in Luminar. We go from that to that. Okay. Now I want to go in to use the tone curve. So if you want to follow along in Neo, you need to be in the develop tool. So that's where you find the develop tool in Luminar Neo, right? I want to make this really black on the edge over here too, and I'll show you how to do that, okay? Because I can't move the vignette around in Lightroom like I can in Luminar. So that's kind of a disadvantage, right? So this is actually a really cool shot. It was created, if we look at the exposure on this one. Oops, there we go. Can you see the exposure here? So Neil did this one, F13 for 3 seconds. And during the exposure, he would have zoomed his lens. Okay, so zooming the lens creates this amazing blur. That's really cool. Actually, we have an article on the website, Rob. Can you find the intentional or zoom blur, how to create a zoom effect in camera? Okay. You can also do this with the new blur tool in Luminar Neo using the blur and twirl. Just don't set the twirl amount, leave it to 0, and it creates a zoom. So you can actually create this. Can't do this in Luminar, can't do this in Lightroom, only in Luminar. Okay, now we're in curves, and we want to work with color. Normally, when you're in curves, if you just adjust it, you're working on everything. Okay, so if you're on this one, you're working on tone. Okay, but if you go to any of the others, there's a red, a green, and a blue. Okay, and I can show you where these things are in Luminar. You can actually follow along. Okay, so again, if you want to do this in Luminar, let's do the same thing. I use the camera landscape. I gave it more punch. Okay. And you need to be in here to use curves. Okay. So I'm just doing exactly the same thing. I came into color, right? I gave the orange a bit more saturation. I gave the blue a bit more saturation. And then I shifted them a little bit. Right? Does that look similar? Right? And I added a vignette. Right? I added a vignette. So this is the advantage, actually, of Luminar, because I can move this vignette. I can actually make it larger and then move it over so that it's only darkening this edge, because I want this edge. Let's try that. I want this edge as dark as the other edge. See that? I want the edge a little bit stronger. Okay, so that's the advantage of Luminar. Okay, now to find curves, just open the develop tool again, and there's curves, and then you see red, green, blue. Okay, so you could follow along. Okay, back to Lightroom. So Lightroom gives us the advantage of showing us the color. So if I move this line this way, I get more red. If I move it this way, I get the opposite, which is cyan. Okay. I'm just double clicking to remove the point. Green up is green, down is magenta. So can you start to see some really creative aspects here? Okay. Now keep in mind that you cannot mask the tone curve here. If you want to do it as a mask in Lightroom, you have to go this way. So you have to open it, create something. Like let's say I want to affect just the top part of the image. Okay. So I want to just mask it here. Now there's a curve here. Okay, so if I only want to affect the blue part and I want to give it more green, okay, see how it's only affecting Actually, I like that purple. It's only affecting the top part of the image. See that? And then if I want to do the bottom part a different color, I just need to create another mask and do the bottom part of the image. What color do we want to make that? So I got blue and purple up there. We can go more yellow. And you can do more than one too. Like I just did one on the other one. I could go more yellow, red. Ooh, that's kind of cool. And I'm literally just playing around, right? I've only added 1 point on one of the options here. We can add more points and we could do as many of these as you want, right? I could go into each of them. We can also do really crazy stuff like adding a point like this and then twisting it up and doing stuff like that. Okay, so when you want to get into doing really abstract, bizarre kinds of colors, play with the curve, okay? So you can make some really wild things, right? You start getting stuff like that, and now you're doing what's called like, oh, can't remember the name of the word. I used to do it in the darkroom all the time. Posterization. You're getting kind of a posterization, okay? So if I want to undo this, I just have to double click. Okay, so double click the word adjust and they all go away. I did like that blue color. Okay, and I think I want to fade this a little more. Ooh, that's kind of neat. So see, I'm literally just playing around. And I'm going to go back to this one and I only added green, right? But maybe I want to add some blue. So now it's getting more blue. Or maybe I want to add some of this color. Well, that's kind of neat too, right? So depending what you're doing, I can add color in the highlights or the shadows. Okay, so that's how I created the split thing, was doing the curve as a mask, okay? If I do the curve here, it applies to the whole image, okay? Well, that's neat too. So literally, I'm just making color here, okay? Just making color. Let's see. Any other questions? Because this is kind of a neat effect, right? So using curves, right? Now keep in mind, I do have the option of masking this one in here, right? So if I want, I can do this on the top, right? So on Luminar, I can do a linear gradient, same as I did in Lightroom, and just have it come from the top. Okay, so now it's only affecting the top. And then if I want to affect the bottom, I just need to close the tool, open it again, and do something different on the bottom. Let's do, I'm just looking at the bottom colors. Okay, so linear gradient on the bottom. And then we've got something completely different. Okay, so now you just have to make note. I've got two different develops here. Okay, so the first one does the top, and the second one does the bottom. Okay. So just different way of approaching it, same tools. Any questions? Reminds you of the surf movie, Endless Summer. It is kind of psychedelic, isn't it? Very 70s. But this might actually make a neat background, right? Like what if we exported this and use it as a background? You know? So I could save this, and I need to fix that custom vignette here. So I'm going to do a custom vignette in Lightroom is back to masking. And in this case, I'm going to do a radial gradient. So if you want one that is off center, you have to do it as a mask. Right. So I'm just going to lower this feather a little bit and increase the size because I want it just on these corners over here. Okay, so I want black over there. See that? Make it a little smaller so it gets the top. So I got black around the sides. Right, so now let's just do this for fun. Let's export this as a JPEG, and we could put it on top of something else. So I'm going to export a full-size JPEG, and I'm just going to put it in my downloads just so I can find it easier. And then I'm going to go back to Luminar and add it on top of something. So let's just add this on top of something. Let's add it on top of the building. Right. So now we have to load the new image, and I gotta go find it. That's why I put it here, because I knew it would be easier to find. Okay. So I've added the new image into extras. Now when we add it, I'm just gonna stretch it, and I could change this to color, or okay, so there it is, right? Let's see which one works the best. Overlay is kind of cool, right? So see what overlay does? We could literally put this over anything and make something kind of cool and abstract. Right? I'm not sure that it works on this particular image. Let's see if there's another one. I don't know if there's one in this one. We could put it on here. Let me just do a quick edit on this one to brighten it up a little bit. Okay, so remember I talked about the curve really briefly, as you could tuck in the whites here. So see how the curve is not touching the edge? It's not touching the edge here or up here. That means that we have no pure white. So I'm going to turn the clipping warnings on and keep going. Now I've got a little bit of clipping down there, but I'm not worried about it. So I want to brighten this building up because it's a white house, right? So we should have white. There we go. That looks better. I'm not worried about the sidewalk clipping. We can fix that later. But I just want to put this overlay on top and see what we get. So here we go. Okay, so it's this way, but I need to rotate it. And let's just make sure it's straight. I wish there was a rotate button, to be honest, because it's not that easy to kind of do it, eyeball it. Is that straight? There we go. So I want to fill this one. And then we just have to pick the blend mode. Look at, if I just do color, you just get the color. Right? Well, that's kind of interesting. Look at that. It's changing the hue of the door. That's kind of neat. Look at that. Okay. That's neat too. Right? We could dial that down. So this one could be really fun to apply onto something else. Right? Questions. I think we're at about maximum today. We've done a lot of cool things. Holly says, I forgot the curves had colors. It does. And it's fun. Nick says, I'll definitely experiment with this going forward. Awesome. It is a cool shot, Nancy. I love abstract kind of stuff like that because it really allows you to play around. Right? Any other questions? Do we want to do one more Lightroom one real quick? Because I kind of did an abstract one. Let me do this one. Okay, like what would I do with sort of a normal-ish image? I believe I've already edited this one because I used it in the sample. So you could see the before. It was very sort of low. And this is Nancy's image again. You could see that the color is really low, right? So what I did here was I did the white clicks. Okay? I'm just going to reset it so you could see how I did that. Right? And this one is a JPEG, so you'll notice there's no camera matching profiles here. Okay, so this is how you get to the camera profiles. But I went into here and I chose one of these. So modern number 1, right, gives us immediately more color. So almost always, even if you're not shooting raw, go and play with those profiles, right? Now I'm going to do that shift double click trick that I showed you. So on the whites and on the blacks, and you see how it's gone a little far. I want to keep that softer. Right? See how the color changes with the black. Look at that. Okay. I want to keep that one a little softer as well. Now, one thing I noticed about this image is that this top part is brighter than the bottom part. So what I did was I used a linear gradient over half the image like that. And I just brought the darkness level down. And I kind of looks like the color is different as well. So I gave it a little bit more magenta to try and match the color. See that? Can you see that? Okay, so I'm trying to match the density and the color from one to the other. Sorry about that. Coughing again. I'm out of cough drops. So that's what this is doing. See how it's evening out the exposure, right? Now, when I come back to the main, I can adjust it and have a little bit more even across the image. Okay. I applied an edge vignette, and this is a preset that I use, and I talk about this in the Lightroom course as well. So all that's doing is applying the sliders here in the effects panel. And after I've done that, the edge is darkened now, and I'll brighten up the whole thing a bit more. Okay. So I didn't do a lot to this image. You notice that all I did was I changed the camera profile and adjusted these sliders here in the basic panel and added a radial filter or a linear filter and a vignette, and that's it. Okay, and see how much more color. And notice I did not touch these guys. I love your screen name, Purple Guy. Struggled with curves before starting this course. Awesome. Which course are you doing? Are you doing the Luminar one or the Lightroom one? Because we have both. And I think I'm at maximum today because I'm going to end up in a coughing fit. So let me just come back here. Oh, I'm crying now. So I am going to eat this cake, Holly, in your honor. And probably get a bit more coffee to go with my cake. And I wanted to just say to everybody, Happy New Year again, and happy birthday to Holly. Purple Guy is using Luminar. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad. We need to pick the topic for next week, and I think I'm just going to make a executive decision right now, Rob, and we're going to be doing black and white. So since we did color this week, we're going to do black and white next week. And if you would like to submit your images to have me edit them for you like I did this week, obviously I didn't get to very many, but if you've got an image that you've ever considered or thought about, what would this look like in black and white, send it in. Rob has put a link in the chat, and if you're watching this replay, you can find the link below in the video description on how to submit your images to me. Okay, ideally I do like to get the raw files because, as you can see, there are more options in both of the softwares for me to work with. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, Thomas. Oh, okay. Well, I didn't make that wish for you, but you'll have to get your own cake and do that one, Holly. That's a good wish though. Everybody enjoyed it, learning lots. Give us a thumbs up. And remember to subscribe to the channel. And if you hit the notifications bell, anytime we have a new video uploaded, you will get notice from YouTube. Okay. So it's not an email notice, but you will get notice from YouTube. I just finished a video yesterday that we're going to be posting possibly tomorrow, Rob. We hope tomorrow or Tuesday. And that is on doing batch processing in Luminar Neo. So watch for that one on YouTube in the next few days. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place for black and white conversion. Take care.